back to the Dream, the Journey, and the Promise with me, Ann Ende. This is a channel where I walk you through people's lives as they go from their visions through their journeys into the realization of the promise. Today, I want to talk to you about doing the stuff that matters, the little stuff that matters that nobody sees. And in talking about this, I'd like us to look at David's life in the Bible. And I feel like David is just such the embodiment of humanity. He's actually one of my favorite characters in the Bible because his life was filled with the highest highs and then he had the lowest lows. And in all of that, God was still able to say that he was a man after his own heart. So I just feel like there's so much to learn from his life. And that's what I wanted to talk to you about today. So everybody knows how David, in the Bible fought Goliath, and every most of the time when David's life is talked about, it's about him killing Goliath, the giant Goliath. But nobody really ever talks about what David was doing in the years prior, because when we look at David's life, we see that he was one of it was nine brothers, right? He was one of nine brothers, and he was the one that was least often in the limelight. Like all his brothers were out, doing the things that everybody could see. They were in the wars, fighting, doing things that were considered noble. But David was always left out and he was back, guarding his father's sheep. Nobody ever saw him or talked about him. And he did that for a long time, right? And so nobody ever talks about that period of his life, which was actually the preparation period. And the reason I want us to look at that is because I know that um, today so many people get discouraged when they're going through life and not seeing anything happening in their lives, right? You're going through seasons that just seem long and treacherous, and you're working hard and nobody sees what you're doing. You're in the background, nobody knows who you are, nobody sees what you're doing. But I want to encourage you and tell you that those are the times that actually matter, because the little things that we do in the dark where no one sees is what ends up getting rewarded when everyone's watching, right? People always look at people who've made it and they think, wow, they're an overnight success, wow, they made it. They're lucky, they're blessed. But nobody sees the hard work they did, or how long it took for them to actually get to that point where we finally see them and just think that, oh, they just made it and they were blessed or they're lucky, and you know wish we could be like them. But there was periods of time that they were probably working, I mean long periods of time where they were probably working, doing stuff that was unnoticed. And that's what I want to encourage you today to do, is just be faithful in doing the little stuff when nobody can see it. We all have these dreams that God has given us, and these places that we'd like to reach in life, things that we'd like to achieve. But it seems like the small mundane things that life has us in, or the seasons that life takes us through while we're getting to that point, they seem to be overlooked because people think that they mean nothing. But these are the times that God uses to grow us and to mold us into the person we need to become to realize the dream, or to realize the vision that He's given us. So I want to encourage you to be faithful in those times when it seems like nothing's happening, nobody knows who you are, nobody sees what you're doing, and it just feels like it doesn't count for anything. Believe you me, it counts. And you know that God causes all things to work for our good, right? So every small thing, trust me, He's going to use it, and He's going to use it to bless you, turn it around for your good, when the time is right, in His timing. But anyway, going back to David, he was out in the fields and tending to his father's sheep. And while he was doing that, remember, a bear came and was trying to steal just one of his father's sheep, and he wouldn't have that. So he ended up fighting the bear, with his bare hands, killed it. Same thing, a lion came and tried to steal his father's sheep, and he fought the lion. And it never even says in the Bible that, oh, his his dad recognized him for doing that, or he went back and told his dad how he fought that lion. That was just stuff that he did, that he just thought, hey, I've been given this task of tending to my father's sheep, and I'm just going to do the best job that I can do. It doesn't matter that I'm out here by myself. Nobody sees me. Nobody knows what I'm doing. But I'm not even going to let one of those sheep um, go unaccounted for. I'm gonna fight and do it to the best of my ability, because that's what I've been called to do. And that's what's important with the smallest tasks that we're given. It might seem like it means nothing. You might be in a season where you're, I don't know, washing dishes, doing a small job, running errands for someone in an office. But I encourage you, just be the best person that you can in that position, because that's not going to last. There's growth in that season. There's something that you can learn. And I always have actually just recently started training myself to think, okay, this is a season, and what is it that I can learn from this season? What is it that, why is it that I'm here? And what is it that I can learn? And let me just do my best, because everything that we're doing, we need to do unto the Lord. You're not doing it for your boss that you don't like. You're not doing it so that people can see you. And sometimes we get caught up because we're so tired of doing the same thing day in, day out. We get caught up complaining, and we complain, oh, I don't like this place. I hate this. I don't like this job. I don't like my boss. I don't like what's going on here. Why? Because we just want it. I think it's human nature that we just want to get to the place where we want to get to, the place that we've envisioned in our minds that we want to be at. But we don't see what it actually takes for us to get there. And God is more interested in who we are becoming so that we can get to that place, right? And that's what he did with David. Remember when David was anointed, um, and this is another thing, is that when Samuel came to anoint the next king, right? He came to Jesse because God had sent him to Jesse and said one of his sons was going to be the next king. And so Samuel came and Jesse brought out his sons and left David out, because nobody ever thought about David. Nobody even considered him, not even his family. And that's got to be hurtful. It's like always feeling left out, like nobody feels like you matter, but you do matter. And in David's case, he did matter. God had anointed him. But anyway, so Jesse brought out all his sons and left David out. And after Samuel had gone through each one of them, and God said no to all of them, then he had to ask Jesse, do you not have another son? Like Jesse didn't even think about it. Samuel had to ask him, is there not another one? And so he finally said, oh, yeah, there's one. And even though this is his dad, he was treating it as, I doubt that it could be him. Like, oh, yeah, there's one, but all he does is tend to the sheep out in the field. So Samuel had to send for him, right, to come and be brought before them. And turns out David is the one that God had chosen. And so Samuel anointed him. But you know what happened right after David was anointed? Guess where he went? Right back to the fields. So we think that when God gives us a dream, it's just supposed to happen overnight, and we want to see the results. And I want to see some progress, some tangible progress. But it takes time, because David ended up going out into the field and going right back to what he was doing. It's like, yes, I've been anointed, but there is still a process that I have to go through. And he went and still took care of his father's sheep until it came to everyone still didn't even know of David. I mean, his siblings knew that he had been anointed because Samuel anointed him in front of his family. But nobody else knew about David, right? And so when the Israelites were fighting the Philistines, and Goliath gave them the challenge that, hey, why don't you call someone up to fight me? And if you all win us, then we'll be your servants. But if we beat you, then you'll be our servants, right? And because Goliath was so huge and just looked so threatening, no one had taken him up on that challenge. And the Bible said he kept doing that for 40 days and coming up to the Israelites, coming before them and showing how mighty he was. It's like, is there not any of you that will come fight me? But David all this time was not with the Israelites. He was not with the army. He was tending to his father's sheep, and his father actually sent him to go take food to his brothers, right? And while he was talking to his brothers, just so happened during that 40-day period, then Goliath came up once again to threaten the Israelites, and that's when David saw him. And so the Israelites had been scared all this time, and no one had taken him up on this challenge. And David finally sees this guy and is not moved by his size at all, but instead is moved by the fact that he's trying to instill fear in the Israelites, right? Knowing full well that he's not in covenant with God. So David was like, who is this uncircumcised Philistine that is trying to, come against the army of the Lord? So while David was out in the fields, he had been growing his relationship with God. He had grown such a trust for God, because he knew that him fighting the bear was and defeating the bear and the lion was because God had been with him. God had given him strength during those seasons. So all this time, what it seems so insignificant, oh, just out here taking care of sheep, but his faith was growing. He knew that he could trust God. He actually, because of his competence, now, hey, I fought the bear and I fought a lion. Who's Goliath that I can fight him? But he wasn't boasting in his strength. He was actually saying, who's this uncircumcised Philistine? Who's this who comes against the people of the God that I know, the God that has seen me through all these other things? Who is he that he thinks that he can threaten us, right? And so that's one thing I really want you to get from this, is that while you're in those seasons that seem like nothing is happening, it just seems like a long drawn out period of just nothingness, there's actually a lot that is being cultivated in you. So it would be to your benefit to just embrace those seasons, right? Just take it in. See what God is teaching you, see what He's molding you into. Take the lessons from that season in your life, because guess what? He's going to use those lessons to take you to the next season of your life, to take you through your journey to where you're going to realize the promise that He's given you, right? There's just a process we have to go through, and we can't bypass that process, because if we do, we won't be able to stand in the end when He leads us to that promise. You won't be able to stand unless you go through the promise. And this is exactly what we see in David's life, right? So we know that in the end, he took on Goliath. He said, "You know what? I'll go up and I'll fight Goliath." And they're like, "How do you expect to beat Goliath? This is what Saul told him. You're just but a youth, and yet Goliath has been in the army since his youth. So Goliath is like well advanced in years over David. He's been fighting since his youth, and not only that, he's a giant. He's like way bigger than everybody else, and David wasn't even the biggest in the army, right? So Saul finally agreed and uh, gave David his blessing to God and fight Goliath, right? And he gave him his armor. And what's funny is, as I was reading this, I realized that um, after Saul gave David his armor, David tried it on and was going to use it, but he said, "You know what? I can't use this because this hasn't been tested." And that stuck out to me. It's like, if he took Saul's armor, it could have been, um, I guess, perceived as, well, Saul's armor helped him. And he said, this hasn't been tested. And so he took that off because he knew what had actually been tested was his faith in God and his trust in God. He had trusted God, and that was tested and proven, and he knew that that would work. So instead of taking the armor, he instead picked up a sling and 5 stones and went in faith, knowing that God was backing him up to fight this giant, right? That wouldn't make sense to any of us. I mean, Goliath had all this armor that when they described it, it sounded like, I don't know, something out of, one of the Avenger movies, I guess, like Iron Man or something like that. But David just walked up to him, this little boy, young boy with 5 stones and a sling, and it wouldn't make sense. But the one thing he had, and that he had cultivated over a period of time while he was in the wilderness where nobody saw him and nobody knew him, is he had cultivated full trust in God, knowing that God was going to back him up no matter what he went through. He had fought that lion and God had seen him through. He had fought the bear, God had seen him through, right? And so now he's walking in faith, knowing, I know my God. I know that I'm in covenant with God. Goliath has no covenant with the God I serve. So there's no way he can defeat me. It doesn't matter what the weapon was in his hand, he was going to defeat Goliath based on his covenant with God. And that's exactly what he did. Just one stone from his little sling. He had 5 stones, but he just took one, and that ended up hitting Goliath right in his head and killed him. And it says later on that David didn't even have a sword on him. He had to go get Goliath's sword to cut his head off, which he had told him he would do, right? So, anyway, so I just wanted to share that with you and to give you a glimpse of what it looks like to go from a vision, because remember, David had been anointed as king, right? This was years back. And it wasn't until he fought Goliath that after that, he then um, took his position. Well, a while later, but he took his position as king. But in that process, David was growing into the person that could become the king to lead the people. And his example in fighting Goliath, is what grew people's trust in him. But before that, nobody knew of him. Nobody knew who David was. His family even disregarded him, and he was okay with that. He was fine with that, just being the boy in the wilderness tending to his father's sheep. So I want to encourage you, no matter what it is you're doing today, do it with pride, do it with gratitude. Know that God has you covered, and there's growth in the process. That's where you grow into the person that He wants you to become. Remember, it's not all the achievements or the accolades that matter, but it's the person that you're becoming that actually matters. So take pride in what you're doing today. Do not be discouraged. Keep going, because yes, you have the vision, there's a journey, but you will realize the promise if you faint not. So I hope this blesses you. And as always, remember to love fully, forgive freely, and make each moment count. God bless you.